Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? Welcome to our TPE candidate webinar. This week we're doing networking, and we have two great presenters ready for to present to you all some tips and tricks about networking during your job search process, both on-site at TPE and also once you leave TPE. I am Berenice Sanchez. I will be serving as your moderator. And one of the things that I want to let you all know before we get started is that you all have the options to ask questions throughout this webinar, and I'll be keeping an eye on those questions to make sure that we can get you prepped and ready to go. On your webinar toolbar, there is an option for questions that you all can type in, so please feel free to type those questions in throughout the entire webinar, and we'll try to answer them as the presenters go throughout the session as well as at the very end. And so at any point that you have any questions, just shoot it in there and we'll be keeping track. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and let Jeff and Titus take it away.
All right. Titus, you want to introduce yourself first, or should I? How do you want to tackle this, man?
Yeah, you know you got it. Go ahead.
I'm just marveling at these nice pictures. I think that's the first key to networking, right? Is get some great professional headshots that you can look really good if you do a webinar for a bunch of budding young professionals. But my name is Jeff Jakob. I'm excited to chat with you all today. Coming from the University of Illinois, the Illinois Leadership Center. You may have heard that there was a baseball game that occurred in Illinois, or not in Illinois, in Ohio last night. So for any Indians fans out there, I'm really sorry, but there's certainly still a buzz here in wonderful Champaign, and hopefully as we get going, I'll be able to share a little bit about my experience and background, and some of even what our office does is help students here at the University of Illinois learn about how to network and how personal branding fits in with, that kind of professionalism and how they navigate the job search and all of those things. So hopefully myself and Titus can be of assistance today.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Titus Delicate, and I am a Residence Life Coordinator at Towson University. If you don't know where Towson is, it is in Maryland, very close to the Baltimore area, so the DMV area. We're all kind of connected, but Residence Life Coordinator, so Resident Director, HD, all the different types of slang that we use in our field. But I work in housing, oversee a couple of residence halls, as well as multiple student staff. And so I've been here for a few years now. But yeah, I think it's pretty good.
So Berenice, yeah, there we go.
There we go.
So, I mean, really today we're just going to talk. I mean, you can see the outcomes on the slide, but really just talk about networking, right? What are techniques? What might be some things that help you when you're at TPE? Like, we want you all to be able to get jobs and be successful contributing folks within the field of higher education or student affairs or whatever that might look like. So maybe we can help you out with that. So we'll talk a little bit about what networking is, how to network, tips, tricks, and advice, and some opportunities. And really, I think a lot of it will probably be Titus and I just speaking about our experience and how these things have played out positively for us over the course of the past couple of years. Titus, anything else that we're going to touch on, you think?
No, I think you got it.
We're just crushing it right now. So I guess I think it's important context is for us to share a little bit about our background and kind of how we've gotten here, because I think certainly networking is a part of, any professional person's experience. I mean, I think it oftentimes is a term that sometimes causes folks to clam up or roll their eyes, or makes them uncomfortable because it feels so like very, very transactional. But I think what some of the stuff I'll talk about today is that it's really, I mean, certainly there's some positives that come of it, but I don't think that that's the purpose. And I bring that up because for me it's played a big role in terms of how I've gotten to where I am today, and by no means am I an expert or a professional or any of that, but I can see the clear background. I mean, I got both of my degrees from Virginia Tech, and when I was leaving grad school, I was a very do as I say, not as I did. I didn't like seek advice from anybody about how to apply for jobs. I submitted terrible applications, had a terrible resume. It was really pretty embarrassing, to be honest with you. And the only reason I got a job after grad school was because of relationships that I had built there at Virginia Tech, and I was asked to then take a job as a residential learning coordinator for Virginia Tech, and not having had any residence life experience, and I was working with fraternity and sorority students and had no experience in that area either as an undergrad or a grad, but yet that network, that relationship helped me get placed in kind of that position, and then that even kind of resurfaced 3 years later after I'd done that for a couple of years, and was then asked to do another job for the university, and I worked actually at a study abroad center in Switzerland, and I was the first person for Virginia Tech to hold that role, and again, only had that because of really networking appropriately. So until I came to Illinois, as you know, in my current position, I had not successfully applied for a job in my life. So like, let that sink in, and how like networking can really be a positive thing. And so, I mean, now what I do is try to help students not, you know, be an idiot like I was years ago, think more critically about their leadership and how that can impact them, and how developing your leadership skills is really critical and important to your life and your work. So that's really kind of what I do now, is give a lot of seminars about different leadership topics.
Yeah, I kind of thinking through networking and just how I've gotten to where I am today. I think back to my undergrad. I did in North Carolina, and I was a part of an all-male peer education sexual assault group known as 1 in 4. Great time, did that for all 4 years of my undergraduate career. And the advisor for the group, great individual, kind of guided us and just was a good mentor for a lot of the males that was in this group. And towards the end of my time in undergrad, I had some ambition in terms of like what I wanted to do. Student affairs was kind of there, but it wasn't the whole picture. And so when my advisor left, he went on and moved on in his career. I was kind of a little bit lost. I graduated and I moved back home. I was applying for grad school in the major that I was in, but it didn't feel like something that I wanted to do. And so we kept in touch, of course, and he reached out to me. It was just giving me options in terms of, hey, there are some different assistantships that I think you might be interested in throughout the country. And it actually, there was one assistantship that caught my eye. It was basically what I was doing in undergrad in the peer education group, but it would be an assistantship in grad school. And so it was in Oklahoma, of all places. And so I was like, you know what, why not? It's an opportunity. The degree that it was connected to was in student affairs, which, again, it wasn't the primary focus, but it was something that I was very interested in given my just what I did in undergrad. And so I applied. I didn't get that specific assistantship, but I did apply to the program, and I got into the program. And then it was funny because his advisor, so my mentor in undergrad, his advisor, when he was in undergrad years and years ago, actually became my advisor when I was in grad school. And so like that connection, if I had met my mentor in undergrad and then he connected me to his advisor who became my advisor later in grad school, if I didn't have that connection, then I probably wouldn't be here today right now. And so, after grad school, I was able to meet some people throughout, and we can talk a little bit more about that as we go through the presentation. But you never really know who you might meet, and just what type of connection they can hook you up with. And so that was something that's pretty defining for my experience.
So when we think about what is networking, we see some of the stuff that we've listed on the screen, but just as I was kind of prepping to talk to you all today, one of our programs we do is, again, I kind of mentioned at the beginning, an aspect of it is talking to students about what is appropriate networking. So how we define that is the ability to create and maintain an effective, widely based system of resources that works to the mutual benefit of oneself and others. And so I think that's the key when you see looking at this slide. I mean, I think that exchange between individuals is a really important aspect that I think we need to keep in the forefront of our minds as we move through this discussion today. Because again, I think oftentimes people think of networking as I'm going to meet people, I'm going to go glad hand, I'm going to schmooze, and that's going to directly benefit me. But the person that you're interacting with, that there needs to be some value for them as well. And it's what Titus was saying. It's the examples that kind of, in the positions that I've gotten that I didn't have to apply for, it was, yes, it was a tremendous opportunity for me to go do those things, but then also they were getting a benefit from that as well by having a competent person or someone that they knew was competent to do those jobs. And so I think that's what's critical when you think about networking. It's best maximized when others can share elements about who you are and elements of your personal brand. So, for instance, when I went to go work in Switzerland, our associate vice president for student affairs had to be able to say to other administrators at the institution, people who were working international affairs, people that were working in risk management and other things, that, hey, Jeff is really good at what he does, and even though he's never lived in another country, he's worked in a really successful community for us for the past 3 years in a really challenging environment working with some fraternity and sorority students. You need to be able to take him, or we should take him and send him over to set this up. And so I think that's the key part. He was able to go and speak on my behalf based off elements of kind of my personal brand, and I'll talk about that a little bit more and how important that is. But I think that's really critical when you think about your network and how it speaks for itself, because I think that's a big part of networking, is that, yes, it is an active process, yes, it is something you do, but once you've done that successfully, it continues to grow and take and kind of does the kind of markets you for yourself. It doesn't require that active piece. So I think when you're thinking about sharing information, and be strategic about how you do that, whether it's talking about job-related information or even making sure that people know about what you're interested in and trying to connect those interests with them. And I mean, there's been several situations in the recent past where a student of mine or someone else has been interested in a certain job area, and I've been able to pick up the phone and call someone who's doing that, whether it's a friend or a colleague or whatever that might be, even outside of student affairs, and say, hey, Jamie, will you talk to this student? She's interested in working at a charter school in Atlanta. So I was able to connect those two, and I think that's, again, a big part of that is that relational piece.
So how to network? You should start networking before you need it. And what we kind of mean by that is you already do this a lot in your day-to-day, or whenever a friend introduces you to someone else, you're introducing who you are. You really you don't need to plan like, okay, on December 18th, I'm going to begin my networking. Like, that's not really how it works. Kind of what Jeff said, like, we don't need to overthink this. It's a very natural thing, but I understand how there's this huge, like, oh, networking. We put a lot of emphasis on it, or you might hear a lot about it, but it's a very natural thing. So, start telling people about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what are maybe some of your goals, that kind of thing. It doesn't even matter really who it is. It could be your peer, it could be your mentor, it could be a supervisor, etc. Because as Jeff was saying, as they get to know you, they can then begin to speak on your behalf. And so you have no idea who they might run into, and they can speak well on your behalf, saying, oh, so-and-so is really good at this, or I actually know someone who is interested in this. You just really never know. And so that kind of connects with having that plan and talking about yourself, all right? And so you talk about your strengths, your skill sets. What are you? What can you do? Who are you? I know it may seem a little conceited and odd and just a little uncomfortable to talk about yourself, but if you like public speaking, you like public speaking. Talk that up. A lot of people don't like public speaking, and so it won't be conceited. It's a skill. If you're a good writer, if you're a good resume builder, if you are good at analyzing very things you don't really think about on a day-to-day basis, but you just do, talk that up. Those are strengths. Those are talents. And so you want to, kind of moving on, forget your personal agenda. And what I mean by that is not, being selfish, right? And so think about what Jeff said, how can you benefit someone else? And so really go into it with a humble heart, humble mind. People will know when you're being a little fake, you know, a little, you don't want to be that kind of floozy person just meeting everybody all the time. Hey, 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 this is who I am. This is what I can do. It's being genuine about it. You're not going to connect with every single person. That's unrealistic. But when you do meet that one person that you might share some type of connection with, whatever it might be, don't take it for granted, and think, okay, this person's cool. I kind of vibe with them. Now, what can I offer them? What type of skills might they be looking for that I can bring to the table, even if they don't know that they're looking for that skill in the moment. And so it's just really important to be humble when you're introducing yourself. Be humble when you're, you know, making those connections. Don't, you know, you have your goals, yes, but think, you know, don't necessarily put that in the forefront because people will kind of notice that you're in it for yourself. Never dismiss anyone as unimportant. Kind of what we've already talked about. You know, you just have no idea who knows what or who knows who, and so really don't take anyone that you meet for granted. This might sound confusing. Like, I know you may not connect with every single person, but still treat everyone as it's the first time you're meeting them, and then go from there. But definitely don't dismiss anyone as unimportant. Connecting the dots. You know, kind of going back to the talent, strengths, skills, you know, thinking about how you can be useful, all of those things. Just always offering, what can I do? What can I do to help? What can I do to help? Keeping that humble mind, I think, is really important as you go through your job search. Follow up and be thorough is what we mean. So if you do have that connection with someone, if you go to TPE, if you go to a conference, you had a connection with them, it's not awkward, it's not weird at all for you to reach out to them later, a couple weeks later, shoot them an email, say, hey, I really enjoyed our conversation, even if it was 5 minutes. You know, they will remember you based on what you are able to remind them of. And so if you connected on something really quick, just shoot them an email, say, hey, I really enjoyed connecting with you, it's great meeting you, hopefully we can connect in the future. Simple as that. Doesn't have to be anything, no paragraphs, no essays. Just a quick little email is a great way to let people know that you actually cared about what you talked about. And so with all those things that I just talked about briefly, you know, believe in the power of networking.
Muted.
Somebody knows you because, you know, you said this one time to this one person. It's just such a cool network. I mean, that's what networking is. It's a cool network of human beings, you know, all in one place. And our one place is student affairs. And so never take for granted anyone you meet. Believe in the power of networking. It does not happen overnight. Sometimes it takes days, weeks, months, sometimes even years. And so just don't get discouraged as you begin this journey.
Anyone else think the quote of the webinar so far was Titus just dropping that we're, would you say, a cool web of human beings?
I don't know what I'm saying.
How great is that, man? I mean, I just got to tell you. I mean, I think it's true, though. I mean, when we think about it, that's what this is all about, is that connection and how we're all tied together. I mean, if anybody on the call or the webinar here is you know, an advocate of using StrengthsFinder. I mean, I think that's that connectedness piece where you see kind of the interwoven tie of everything coming together, and you know, we all have to do that at times, and we all have to see what those existing connections are and how we're all tied together. So Titus, I felt inspired by that. I really did. So when we think about networking, I mean, I think it is important. I mean, Titus talked about it. I mean, to build that web, to build that network, and to utilize those things. But I think and when I say use the existing connections, I mean, I think you all can picture a situation when you've been out to dinner or at a bar or with a group of people that, you know, there's one person that is always like jutting in, oh, you know so-and-so, oh, I know this person too. I mean, it almost feels like the kind of one-up guy, you know, the one person who's always trying to like name drop and be better. And I mean, that's not how like you do that, right? But if you're talking to me and you know that I worked at Virginia Tech and went to Virginia Tech, it would be appropriate to say, oh my gosh, did you know Frank Shushock? Did you work with Frank? And I could say, yeah, he was one of my mentors, and we could then engage, and maybe that opens up a connection for us and allows us to kind of build our network. So I think that's a really important, just to don't come off as, you know, as Titus talked about, you know, not genuine, being insincere, schmoozing, all of those things. And I'd even take it a step further. I mean, as you think about your current network, do you have people right now that you could go to ask for academic advice? Do you have someone you can go to for career advice? What about just general insight and wisdom? And I think that's really what, you know, again, and it's not just about getting jobs, it's about how you can be advised along the way, because those are the type of people that are going to know you the best, are going to know the elements of your brand that you should highlight, are going to know your strengths that you should play to. I mean, those are really critical things and really critical people that are a part of kind of building that reputation and making yourself, you know, have the strongest network you can. And so it says, learn the art of chit chat and small talk. I mean, we were talking before the call how difficult this can be, and I made a joke about how, you know, people always default to talking about the weather, and then we started talking about the weather. So, like, you know, being able to be topical and have discussions that, you know, isn't just going up and saying, hey, I'm looking for a job, you know, I'm awesome at what I do, please hire me, but being able to actually engage and talk about what matters to that person, and you know, what are topical things that you could bring up, you know. I mean, I think of that small talk, I mean, certainly you've heard the things that there's probably certain conversations you want to avoid, right? Like, you never know if even within a field like student affairs, bringing up certain political viewpoints or religious viewpoints, I mean, certainly I think that can be kind of shaky ground, but maybe if, you know, again, you knew that the World Series or other type of events are going on that you could bring up that would probably facilitate some conversation with someone, certainly that's how you want to engage in that. And I think that's really critical, just to be able to have those discussions and be able to connect with people in that way. And, you know, you often hear people talking about the importance of an elevator pitch, and I'm sure many of you all have heard the concept, the idea of if you've got on an elevator, you know, and had until the next person got off the elevator, what is it that you want to share about yourself? And so there's a few things when we talk to our students about pitching and what that looks like that we tell them in terms of what might that look like. We tell people to keep it simple, okay? So what are the key facts that person would need to know? We tell them to keep it concrete. Okay, so making sure that it is something that has tangible information behind it. So if you're talking about your strengths, and even when you think about the context of an interview, if you're talking about your strengths and your talents and those things, talk about how that actually impacts you in practice, how that actually plays out. This pitch should be unexpected. Like, don't put me to sleep, you know, throw me a curveball, make it interesting for me. And then lastly, it should be a story. I mean, I think, you know, when you're interacting with people at TPE and other kind of job type settings, the people who you're interacting with, you have to acknowledge they're seeing hundreds, if not thousands, of people, whether it's in resumes or interacting or whatever that looks like. So how is it that you're going to set yourself apart with that pitch, right? So that kind of goes to the next piece, but thinking about, again, sharing elements of who you are, why you're great, your personal brand. And I mean, I think there's a lot of tools out there that can help you shape these things. You know, I talked about the StrengthsFinder assessment. If you have not taken that before, I'd highly recommend it, and read through the results and do some work to think about really how those things have impacted you. There's other instruments out there, psychometric type measures that you could utilize. They're even free. There's the VIA survey of character strengths, you know, the Myers-Briggs temperament. There's True Colors. There's all of these different type of things that are getting at some similar topics in different ways. So certainly understanding your strengths. And one thing I did, I had to lead a seminar last year for about 100 students, and it was related to personal branding and some other things. And I actually sent a message to probably 20 friends and colleagues and family members, and I said, what would be 5 words that you would describe me with? And I was really genuine interested in to know, because I wanted to see what my self-perception was compared to some people that know me the best. And it was a very helpful exercise to be able to then talk about my personal brand and what are those things that do set myself apart. And that's, even though I did it for the context of an exercise in terms of the seminar I was doing, it's something that certainly aligned with my strengths from the Clifton StrengthsFinder perspective, but then also was very affirming and helped me realize that these are the things that set me apart from others. And I think that was really critical. So when you're talking with people in networking and Just in general, I mean, I think some other things to think about. Do your homework on somebody. If you know you're going to be interacting with someone, again, think about what are ways that you could engage in chit-chat or small talk. Be transparent. You certainly want to make sure they know why you're talking to them and what the purpose is or who you are, because at the end of the day, they're going to find out anyways. If you got some deep, dark skeletons in your closet, don't necessarily get caught up in the process, and then later they're going to find out that you have this issue anyways, because that will be a waste of your time and their time. And again, be personal. I mean, I think oftentimes these things can feel stuffy, can feel like you have to act a certain way, but really remember you're talking to people too. You're just engaging with them, so try to do that. You know, don't some other of the tips that are on the slide here talking about don't overstay your welcome. So if you get invited to a social at NASPA or ACPA, it's probably a good idea to stop by, right? Because you've been invited and you probably had a successful interview, but you don't want to be the person closing it down, right? Like you don't want to show up at 5 and if it goes till 7 to be there at 7, you know, drinking Bud Lights the whole time. I mean, that might be fun, but you know, I think that creates this, again, displays a certain brand image of who you are to the group. So go, drop in, make sure again you're selling yourself and who you are with your personal brand and all of those things, but get a gauge on what that environment is and know when you should leave. And then, and Titus talked about this, maintain the network. And I think that comes with follow-up. I think that comes with effort. I mean, if you go to one school and you get your first job, make sure when you go back to your other institutions and places you went to school that you take time to go visit people, that you take time to connect and tell people thank you and keep them updated on where you are, because again, those mentors, those people that care about you, they want to know what you're doing, and that, again, that only helps as you continue to progress on this journey.
Yeah, no, I actually add to what Jeff just said. After I got my first job here at Towson, I actually, you know, kind of emailed everyone back about, you know, all the people who kind of helped me along the way. Like, hey, got the job. Oh my God, thank you so much for, you know, your help. Even if you didn't really help me that much, you know, you were still my supervisor. So whatever I learned from you obviously helped me get to where I am. And so that's definitely important too. When you all do get your, you know, your jobs, don't forget to, you know, give it back to the people that got you to where you are. So whether it's former supervisors, colleagues, all of that, even people that you potentially will run into at TPE, and I can talk about that in a second. But so opportunities to network. Social media, I think we're all pretty well versed in that, whether it's through Facebook, joining the Student Affairs Professionals group, LinkedIn, I would say that that's a pretty great place just to keep yourself updated. Again, you never know who you know that knows someone else that then will then look at your LinkedIn profile. So keep that up to date. I think, you know, I'm not the most avid LinkedIn user, but it definitely is up to date as far as I'm concerned, and it, you know, was prior to my job search, just because it's another outlet for people. Kind of what Jeff said, candidate employer socials, go to them if you're invited, even if you're not interested in the university, you know, and you just interviewed with them and you kind of like them, but you weren't really, okay, you're not super sold, just go. I mean, it's another opportunity to network. It's not rude to go and introduce yourself and talk to other people, even if you're not that interested. Like, it's just another great opportunity. I like to see TPE and NASPA as a great practice arena. You know, you're talking to a bunch of people all the time. You're on pretty much all the time, so you're going to be exhausted, but you're going to get a lot of experience talking about yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, and how you can turn those into strengths. You're going to get a lot of experience just meeting new people, and so don't take it for granted. It's a kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity, you know, in terms of your current state, right? And so you're a graduate student about to be looking for your first position. You won't ever be in that state ever again, and so don't take the opportunity for granted. The candidate prep area is crucial. You know, that is an awesome resource that the Placement Exchange gives to candidates. It's, you know, especially for introverts. You know, I think a lot of people who consider themselves introverts, they feel that, you know, how do I talk to people? How do I network? How do I connect with other people? You know, I'm not really I don't like being around a lot of people all the time, and TPE can be overwhelming. And so do not miss out on the opportunity to get in those candidate prep areas. There are also quiet rooms, and so if you're an introvert, being an introvert shouldn't mean that you cannot talk to people, but what it can mean is that you definitely need your space, and you need to be alone and just chill out for a second, put on some headphones. And so the candidate prep areas, the quiet areas, they do that for you. That's what they're there for. But on the flip side of that, it's also a great opportunity to continue to talk to other people, with other candidates. You all have to understand that you're not in competition with anyone. It sounds weird because you're going to be in an arena where there are hundreds of people interviewing right next to you. Everyone's interviewing with the same school you're interviewing with, so you're like, wait, what? Titus said I'm not in competition, but he's lying. This person is interviewing with the same school. No, that's not what we mean. We don't mean like you're in direct competition with the person next to you, because it's so much more than that. It's timing, it's fit. You will hear that a lot. If it's a good fit for you and if it's a good fit for the school. But I believe wholeheartedly in timing. You are I believe in kind of fate as well. You're there for a reason. You will end up where you're supposed to. It has nothing to do with, we have this person, and we're going to pick person A instead of person B. Like, especially if they're two people that are really connected. You really just have to get that out of your head and just be who you are, and trust the process. But being supportive and not competitive, tying back to being humble, not forgetting kind of just where you are and who you are, and don't always think about your personal agenda, because it can come off as disingenuous. Again, walking through the TPE on-site event, this is where you will discover where all of these areas are that I've mentioned: quiet rooms, candidate prep areas. And as you're going through, walking through, even on the days of TPE, exchange contact information. I can't tell you how many business cards I kept. I still have, actually from TPE when I went years ago. And so don't forget your business cards. I always seem to forget mine whenever I'm about to meet someone. And so have those on you. Just have a nice little stack with you in your pocket. A nice little trick that people do is, you have one pocket, obviously, that has your business cards, and then another pocket that collects business cards, so you don't get the two confused. And so just determine that before you go. Always exchange contact information. It's not weird or awkward to give someone your business card. It's just an easier way to keep tabs of who you're meeting. And then what to do when you run into a potential employer in public. I don't know why those are in so many quotation marks, but I don't know what they run into. What are you doing? And anyway. So,
air quotes.
The whole thing is in air quotes. This is all not real. So when you run into a potential employer in public, keep it simple. Don't be weird about it. It's I like to think of it kind of like how we were when we were in grade school, and we would see our teacher at the grocery store. We're like, oh, they're a real person. Like, it was, at least for me, it was always strange when I would see like my 3rd or 4th grade teacher out in public. I was like, what? They exist outside of school. Don't treat it like that. They are just probably as tired as you are. And so talk about that. Be like, man, how's your day going? How many interviews did you all do? Like, obviously you just talked to me. I was one of the potential, I was one of the people you interviewed. But they also are going through a lot. As someone who has been on the other side, on both sides, the interviewee and the interviewer, it's exhausting. And so that's an easy go-to if you run into someone in public. Quick hello, good seeing you again. What are you up to? Sounds good. Have fun. Okay, take care. That's it. There's nothing to it. They know you. You know them. You don't need to say, oh, well, how did I do today? Well, I can't wait to see you on campus. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Just run into them, just chill, We're all tired, so talk about that. That's a quick go-to if you have nothing else. You're like, man, I'm exhausted. How about you? I know you guys have been interviewing, or you all have been interviewing all day as well. That's always just a nice thing to acknowledge also, because that shows that you actually are concerned and you're genuine about like their day, and so that's something I always like to hear of someone I run into out in public. Other pieces of advice: Yeah, I kind of going back to the introvert piece, like again, in student affairs, we do this extrovert-introvert thing. Um, I think for introverts, it's about recharging, being by themselves. And so don't get hung up on the, well, I don't know if I can do this, I'm an introvert. Like, it's really about, you're going to have to talk to people. We're in a field where we talk to people. If you don't like talking to people, you may want to get our student affairs, because that's what we do. And so it's about recharging, being by yourself during TPE, finding those rooms that you can be in a quiet space. That's very important. If you don't want to be with other candidates at the time, that's totally fine. Go outside, go for a little walk, put on your headphones, just kind of go back to your hotel room if you have time. That's always a great option. And so just remember that as you're going through this process. Jeff, I don't know if you have any other pieces of advice.
You know, Titus, just one thing you said that I think is really important. We kind of talked about it a little bit. I mean, you got to have a thick skin. I mean, I tell everybody, anybody I interact with, our students, anybody that applying for jobs and working for jobs. I mean, that's hard, and you're gonna get rejected more times than you get a job if you're doing it right. So, but you have to be comfortable with that. I mean, I think that's one thing I remember. I harken back to my grad school days of all the rejections I got. And the first couple was like, wow, man, this is terrible. But then it became part of the process, and certainly you don't need to be like accepting of it, but I think you have to be able to manage it and be comfortable with it, because it's going to happen. I mean, I think that's critical. But no, Titus, I think what you said was great. It was eloquent, so I think we can answer questions now, right?
Yeah.
Yep, I have a couple of questions already for you too, and for everybody who's on, please don't forget on your tool menu, your webinar tool menu, you should see an option for you to type in some questions, and so we're pulling questions from there as well as some of the questions that you all asked when you went in to register. But one of the things that people were interested in knowing more about, and I know you all talked a little bit about networking online and within social media, and so some people are wanting to know, how do you transition the networking that you do on social media, maybe leading up to the event, and then moving from the social media networking to the in-person networking while you're on site or at an interview or something like that?
So, Berenice, are we specifically thinking about, okay, if I've connected with someone on LinkedIn
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm meeting them at TP or somewhere else, how do you make that transition?
Yep.
But I think, just in my opinion, I often think we overthink this type of stuff, and this is a little crass, but one of my new favorite phrases is keep it simple, stupid, right? Like. Most people that you're going to reach out to, and if they're willing to connect with you on LinkedIn, or they're willing to, meet in public or whatever it is, just ask. I mean, just ask. I met a guy, it was probably about a month ago now, on a flight back from a training I was doing, and I was sitting next to him, and I somehow got bumped into first class, which was, act like you've been there before, Jeff. But it was just really interesting experience. And at the end of the flight, I started talking to this guy, and he turns out he is a leadership consultant, does a lot of training. He gave me his book, and I told him that one of my career aspirations is to do something similar to what he does, and I mean, and he probably has this interaction with people all of the time, right? That he gives out his book as his business card. Hey, here's my book, read it, and then come hire me to speak, right? Like that was his thought process. So we had a nice conversation. We went our merry ways, and I just about a week later sent him an email, and I said some of what we talked about. I said, hey, Kevin, it was nice to meet you. I really would love to learn more about this profession and how I might be able to get some footing in it myself. And even though he didn't necessarily remember who I was because he has those interactions, he was glad to hop on the call with me. I talked to him for an hour one day, and I think that's what it comes down to, is just asking people and acknowledging, hey, Titus, we connected on LinkedIn the other day. I sent you a note how I was planning on coming to TPE. I was wondering if you'd have a few minutes to chat a little bit about the position, or chat a little bit about your department, or whatever that might be. I mean, I think you just have to ask. I don't know, Titus, do you have other stuff to add?
Not really. You kind of hit what I was going to highlight, just asking. So it's like you meet someone prior to the conference or the placement exchange. It does not need to be anything ridiculous like, oh, let's go get dinner together. I mean, you absolutely can if you have the time and you want that type of connection, but it can
That's power play right there.
let's get dinner. Or, but it can be as simple as, hey, are you going to be around the area? I'd love to bump into you, just quick chat, just to actually see you face to face. I think that's a pretty valid question, but it definitely starts with you and asking. That's a good move in my opinion.
We have another question. So somebody asked, how do you make sure that conversations don't turn awkward?
That's a great question. Don't be awkward, I guess. I don't know.
And awkwardness. I think what Jeff talked about being having the thick skin. You just have to start. Once you get in the rhythm and go, like I said, the TPE and NASPA, they're all awesome practice arenas. Like, it's a great place for you just to begin practicing, talking about yourself, networking, introducing yourself to others, holding a conversation. Like, the type of conversations that you have at TPE and NASPA are not the type of conversation that you have every day or even every other day or every other week. Like, because of the ambiance, the aura that it produces, like, it's just a different place. And so once you get in it and you start feeling it out, you'll just start developing your own style, your own go-tos. I talked about if you bump into a potential employer in public, instant go-to, man, are you tired? Because I'm tired. Like, I know you've interviewed all day. So I've also been interviewing all day. Even if you only have had like 1 or 2 interviews, you've been on all day. You're trying to impress people. You're trying to connect. And so if you feel things are going awkward, like, it's okay, and sometimes it's not the worst thing to just end it, end whatever conversation you're having, end it naturally if you can. Say, oh, well, I gotta run, I gotta go get ready for my next interview, or if you don't have another interview, just like, man, well, I'm still pretty exhausted, I'm gonna take off and see if I can get some just time alone just to recharge. Think of your exits, I would say. If you feel like things are getting awkward, have like your 2 to 3 just exit phrases to end the conversation. And it's not rude. It's not, insulting to anyone. It's what you got to do. And so I don't know if, Jeff, you have anything else you want to add about.
The only thing I would add, Titus, and I think this goes back to just in general networking and thinking about your personal brand and how you present yourself. I think that oftentimes what makes people feel awkward and act awkward, and when things don't go, we'll just change the language too, when things don't go as you want them to, and they feel uncomfortable, it's because you're not working in an optimal level. And what I mean by that is Judy Garland, Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, once said that be a first-rate version of yourself as opposed to a second-rate version of someone else. So I think it's I think it's important to be an authentic version of yourself. Okay, and so what I often tell people to do that is, again, going back to what are your strengths, what allows you to be successful. And so when you're in the context of networking and you're in the context of TP and all these other things, to prevent things from going awkwardly, don't try to be someone else. Like, be yourself and be authentic. If you're not a naturally, like, positivity is my number one strength, and I mean, it comes natural to me. So if that's not something that's comfortable for you, like, that might not be how you best operate. Maybe if ideation is one of your strengths, using that as an example, talking to the person and doing brainstorming with them will come out more naturally and maybe allow you to shine a little bit better. That to me is what it comes down to, is, be yourself, be authentic, and I think that will avoid that uncomfortable situation.
Yeah, and if you have nothing to say, like, I don't want people to feel that they have to say something to every single person.
Right.
Like, you don't need to be talking to all the people. You need to be focusing on those interviews,
Yep.
Using that energy for that, but don't always feel you have to say something to every single person that you meet.
Yeah, I agree.
It's totally okay.
Yeah.
We had another question about LinkedIn, so asking whether you suggest people only adding people on LinkedIn that they already know and have met? Is it okay to add people who you maybe haven't met in person or connected through an email or something like that? Or is that okay? Is it okay or is it not?
I would zoom out before I answer this question, and I would say, why are you on LinkedIn? Like, start with why, right? What's your purpose in doing anything or any environment? I mean, and I bring that up because, like for me, I'll tell everybody, y'all are all welcome to add me on LinkedIn if you want to connect later, whatever that is. I'm totally fine with that. But I struggle personally to use LinkedIn as a platform to connect with people. I have it, but I'm not successful at using it. So I asked that start with why piece, because if you're just using it to have a connection, almost like, when I was in college, it was who can get the most Facebook friends, right? Like if you're using it in that venue, then it's not going to be a productive tool. So I would think critically about how and why do you want to use LinkedIn, and then go from there. If it is to build your network and make sure people see your brand and understand who you are and what you represent, then by all means add them and try to follow up. And and I'd ask, what's the worst that's going to happen? Someone doesn't accept that? I mean, they're not going to necessarily remember that they didn't accept Jeff Jacobs' LinkedIn request. And then if I meet him later, I'll just try to add him again. Add him again. I mean, I think but think critically about how and why you want to use these things, and I think that will then answer that question for yourself.
Yeah. Likewise.
I nailed that one, Titus.
Next question.
Drop mic, exit stage right.
Another question that we had gotten earlier, and I think you may have touched a little bit about it, but how do you network in a way that seems natural? And I think that this one came a lot with piggybacking off of the introvert question. So if you're an introvert and knowing that you're having to come into these spaces and network, how do you do that where it seems natural?
I mean, Titus, you kind of talked about that a little bit, right?
Yeah, so just basically how do you make it seem natural? I mean, repeat the question again, Berenice.
So this is for some of the people who specifically were saying that they're introverts.
Yeah.
If you're an introvert and you're having to, put yourself in these situations of having to network, especially
muted.
Natural.
Yeah. I mean, I can only speak, obviously, on my behalf. I mean, I have a couple of good friends who would shout from mountaintops that they are introverts, and so I can also talk about sort of their strategies. But I already sort of was highlighting that without saying what I just said, but they really did stress the rooms, right? And so being alone when you need to recharge. I think we all have our moments when we've just had enough of people, and so we need to retreat back to where, some people are extroverts all the time, forever and ever, but I think we all have a little bit of both. And so after you've recharged, after you're well rested, just understand that, I mean, it's fast-paced in the sense of once you wake up, it's going to, and you try to fill in the blanks of, okay, what have I done today? You're going to be like, whoa, I've done a lot today. It's fast-paced in that sense, but when you're in it, it's not that fast-paced. I mean, you're going to be sitting a lot. You're going to be twiddling your thumbs a lot. You're going to be obviously talking a lot when it comes to your interviews. And so if you have an interview and then you're done and that just took like half of your battery power, take a second, go recharge, do what you need to do. Try and really be planful around your days. That's a great way to know that your battery level is full, so that when you do have those opportunities to network, you're able to be genuine, you're able to be at your max capacity. If you're hitting interview after interview, or you're talking to people all the time, you have to recognize when it's time to just step away. You're not missing out on anything. No one's going anywhere. They're all going to be at TPE. And so, in my opinion, and just from my friends who are well-versed in introverts, they always say, being able to recharge, and then just think about how you've met anyone ever. What did you do? I like to think, I'm confident that everyone who is going to TPE or who is even in this webinar has talked to someone and introduced themselves before. And so treat it like that. The more you are able to keep it simple, like Jeff said, the more it's just a conversation. It does not, it's fortunate and it's unfortunate that we place so much emphasis on networking. We're talking about stuff that we do all the time. It's just, we're like highlighting it now. It's like if we had this whole webinar on brushing your teeth or going to bed, we'd be like, okay, well, you got to turn the lights off, but not too soon. You have to make sure that the lights are off right when you're about to, once you start highlighting things that we do naturally, it starts to get, you start to overthink it. And it's just like, just take a second, think about who you are, how do you connect with people. If you're an introvert, you've spoken to people before, you've introduced yourself before. So what was that experience like? What were your poor experiences like? When do you know that it's time to be a super introvert? When do you know when it's time to be a semi-introvert? Meaning, you're talking to people still, but you're stepping away every now and then to recharge. And that'll help you to keep it genuine, keep it simple, just let it flow. You have a cap. If it's like, okay, today I have 2 interviews and I have a lot of breaks and I want to be done talking to people by this time, that's when you're done talking to people. If it's 2 o'clock, it's 2 o'clock, I'm out, peace. If it's 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock. If it's 7, it's 7. Create a cap for yourself. I mean, then you can use that as your benchmark as you go through the rest of TPE. You can be like, okay, well, I stopped at 4 o'clock today, but maybe I could have gone another hour or 2. Try that out. That can also be a good little tool that I've used in the past.
And I just add, Titus, that I think it goes back to what I said earlier, and I think this is a conversation. This isn't just for introverts, because I think, look, I mean, if you're going to go into it saying, well, I'm an introvert, I got to be really careful of myself, all that, like you're putting yourself in a box already and getting behind the 8 ball. I mean, I think it's critical for us to acknowledge who we are, but certainly think open that just because you're an introvert doesn't mean that you can't be successful in this area and that you need to do things special. Because, I mean, that's someone who's highly extroverted. I mean, I have to manage that myself as well, right? Like when I go to things like this, I mean, it drains everybody. So, and again, I tell everybody this, how do you play to your strengths in that environment? Because those things give you energy. And so even if you do, struggle in those type of situations that usually drain your energy level, okay, try to do them in the context of your strengths to balance that out and give that back. And then, like Titus said, self-care is important, but I think that message is for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. If you all have any further questions, all of our social media information is in there. Our email address is there. Please continue to send us questions, concerns, anything else that you want to hear from us as you are prepping for your job search process. And then just wanted to give you all a heads up on the upcoming webinars that we have next week. We do have a candidate orientation, and this is specifically for those who are planning to attend on-site TPE. Registration is open, and you all can go in and register through the Placement Exchange. So feel free to join us for the candidate orientation. This will also be recorded and uploaded, and we'll be following up with some candidate question and answer hours. On November 16th, we're doing resume content, and so we already did our initial resume review webinar last week, and now we're going into some of the content-specific pieces as you're putting together your resume and getting ready if you want to submit it for a resume review later on in December so that you'll have it ready to go. On December 14th, we're doing Navigating TPE on-site on a fixed budget, and this one is always one of our more popular ones, especially for those who are currently graduate students that are planning to attend TPE and how to do TPE on a student budget. We'll have some really great tips for you there. And then January 5th, as you start scheduling and getting ready for phone and Skype and round 1 interviews, we'll be doing a Acing the Phone and Skype interview webinar. So please, please, please register RSVP to join us for those webinars. And I want to thank our panelists, Jeff and Titus, for joining us and giving us all of this great information. And everybody have a lovely rest of your Thursday.
Thanks, you all.
All right, thank you.